So we never had an office. We don't plan to have an office. Our team is distributed across India. Anywhere, you could be anywhere in India. You just volunteer team, the 260 people volunteer team that we had reached in 2014 till 2016 started to go down. And around 2017-18, it was just 2-3 people left.
Being an Indian company, and then you decide not to write about cricket. Like, there is certainly some business strategic moves going on in the background.
The good thing is it's fair for everybody because they don't tell it to anybody, which is great.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Magazine 3 TV Interviews. And today we have Suryansh Tibarewal with us of Essentially Sports. And he's the co-founder of one of the biggest sports media brand. I guess I would let him introduce himself. And Suryansh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks for the invite. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. As you said, I'll go ahead with the introduction. So my name is Suryansh Tibarewal. I am one of the 3 co-founders of EssentiallySports.com. Essentially Sports is a interesting venture. It's something we started back in college in 2014. The idea is that fans, we are all sports fans, and we believe that what fans want on the internet from the sports media is different than what the media is providing right now. Okay. So we want to deliver the news from the fans' perspective. That's how we started. That's how we are growing. We are a bootstrap distributed remote company. So we never had an office. We don't plan to have an office. Our team is distributed across India. Anywhere, you could be anywhere in India. You just need a laptop or even just a mobile phone and a WhatsApp to get started, because 80% of our work just happens on WhatsApp. We are a WhatsApp run company. Not a lot of companies at our scale. We are at 180 people right now run on WhatsApp.
That's great. And I believe you had taken this initiative post-COVID, right? Or pre-COVID?
No, always. When we started in 2014, we've always been like that. We never had an office.
Okay, interesting.
So we were pre-COVID remote.
So back in 2014, it was something which was, I mean, you had to explain, like, is that even a thing, right? How was it challenging recruiting new people, and was it like getting the culture right, getting the right kind of people? How challenging was it?
So I think our roots explain a lot of our current situation. So our roots in 2014 was in college. So there were 2 colleges primarily in India, NSIT and VIT Chennai, where this started. My co-founder Harit is from VIT Chennai, and me and Jaskira, the other 2 co-founders, are from NSIT. Okay. And there were a lot of other core people as well in Essentially Sports that time. So at that point, it was not supposed to be a venture. It was more of a expression for us. And turns out a lot of people wanted to express. I myself started as a cricket writer in Essentially Sports. So a lot of people across these colleges and across India just wanted to express themselves. Blogging somehow as a community also has been always open to do things online, and it never really had an office as a culture as well. Then at that time, it was common to do, like, college societies used to be a thing, right? And people used to put in a lot of effort in college society. So it kind of became like that as well, because you would just generally get the new juniors who come into college. They would get to know that, okay, this exists and it's happening. Around 2018, so around 2017, all of us graduated and a lot of things started to happen in life. But this continued, this existed. The volunteer team, the 260 people volunteer team that we had reached in 2014 till 2016 started to go down. And around 2017-18, it was just 2-3 people left, keeping it alive and keeping it moving. But I think that journey gave us the idea what really culture means and how to create that energy. And I always say this to my team and everybody I talk to about Essentially Sports, that the company sports has always united us. It's more than the vision statement, more than what the company does, etc. It's that everybody who's attracted to sport just comes to the company automatically, and they are here for the sport, and we just let them do that very well. which nobody else does, I guess. So that's why it's always attracted. Then another thing for us is that we have an edge because nobody is doing America that well in India. So if you are attracted to American sports, we are the only company based out of India which is doing it.
That's
In a
great.
way.
But sports is such a huge competitive niche. Like, how do you find that spot?
Our edge, the spot, in my opinion, is our rawness. It's the fans' perspective. We don't mind. We are not a New York Times who has a 150-year-old history to adhere to set a standard. We are the new gen company. So if we know that memes is what attracts the audience right now, we will use memes to then deliver them the right news.
I mean, meme has become such a important part of the life. I mean, we cannot even. I don't think how we were living back in the days.
Yeah,
but
exactly. It's the most
I don't think
powerful
we will ever
source of
go
information.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, even web stories, which is just it was launched by Google AMP, right? And even your company has a tool for that. So even products like that, we are one of the first companies to pick it up. So we were doing almost 100 stories a month or something on sports, which nobody was doing back 1.5 years ago when stories was just launched on different platforms. So things like this just create a difference, and it allows us to attract talent. So for example, engineer we hired recently, he actually discovered us while reading a piece. He was reading a Formula One piece, and then he was like, oh, I would love to work here. So he just went to the contact us careers page and just sent us an email.
Wow. So it was, though he was an engineer, but it was that sports fanboy in him that.
Yes.
So it's even acting as a recruitment tool for you guys.
Exactly.
Interesting.
He was like, I love Formula One. So in fact, his mail was so passionate about Formula One that I thought he's applying as a journalist.
Okay.
And but I saw his resume and I saw that, okay, he has engineering talent. And in my head, I was thinking that time, okay, maybe we should hire him for engineering. And then I reread the email and I noticed he has actually applied for engineering.
Wow. Interesting. You mentioned that there was a team of volunteers, and then there was a moment when only few people were left, right? And then you got the whole group back together and got the ball rolling. You also mentioned one thing, that the energy is the culture, right? And I feel that that is very true. The culture that we are talking about in the companies is nothing but an energy that flows throughout the people. How do you set that energy? How are you, like, once you got the people back, are these people now full-time salaried? Are these people like, I understand they are passionate about sports, but then apart from the sports, they also need to care about, like, how are they impacting their, what's the impact on the professional life? And then it also comes with a lot of stress of the personal life. So how do you set that energy throughout the team?
Yeah, so around 2018, 2017, 2018, a lot of our structural ethos transformed in a bit. The fans' perspective stayed, but the way the organization done transformed a bit. And a lot of credit goes to Harit and Jaskirat, my co-founders. So we kind of rebuilt the way the team was set up, and it became a completely professional organization around starting from 2018, where everybody was, we hired like talent who was looking into sports but can make a career out of here. So we have a clear career ladder now. People join as a writer, they can become an editor, they can become a sub content lead, they can become a content lead, they can become part of the content strategy team. We allow them to even become part of the SEO team or even join engineering marketing teams. So there are departments set up as a mature department. In the past 4 years, we've been scaling pretty well. And in terms of balancing with life, I think we give a lot of autonomy to our people. So what this allows us to do is that we never micromanage the team that we have. So we don't say that, okay, this is your login time, this is your logout time. We only talk in terms of outcomes, that, okay, this is the outcome expected out of you. And everybody is mature enough to make that happen from there. Now, as long as you're delivering those outcomes, you can manage your day in whatever form you want. So like, let's say, like we were just having a quarterly meet last quarter, and a lot of our content leads were there. It was primarily content leads quarterly meet, and we took them to an IPL match as a retreat in the end. a lot of people were just allotting topics while watching the IPL match as well, because sports is just a big part of their life. They can allot topics on WhatsApp. It's a part of the life. So that's how it functions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's more of a work for them than sports, right? The retreat, it was more of a
No. It was not around. So we don't cover cricket. So
Hmm.
it was not that they were
You
allotting
don't
topics.
you don't really you don't cover cricket at all?
Yeah, we don't even write one piece on it.
Interesting. Why not?
Well, we even though we run from India, our clear target is American sports. So
Mm.
we're just operations running from India, but our ethos, our target audience, everything is targeted about American and American sports.
Interesting.
82% of our audience is USA right now.
Hmm. So being an Indian company, right? And in India, cricket is such a big part of
Hmm.
the life. I mean, you cannot Bollywood, cricket are just two
The
essential
ABCD.
pillars of
Yeah.
Indian culture.
Yeah.
So being an Indian company, and then you guys are so passionate about sports, and then
Hmm.
you decide not to write about cricket. Like there is certainly some business strategic moves going on in the background. Like who is responsible for those strategies, and like what all those? Please help me. Help us actually understand that, because it's a very positive move that you are doing business strategic point of view.
So a lot of it was actually data backed. So till
Mhm.
2018, we used to do cricket. Um, but we noticed that the space in cricket is way too competitive, and people have started to do the kind of content which the style of content we didn't want to do.
Hmm.
And to get those clicks, those optimizing for that extra click, even though the volumes existed, the kind of coverage, the kind of audience, the kind of casual cricket fan base that has been attracted now with the IPL generation and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it was not helping our numbers. We would notice that people would come on the website and bounce more quickly, wouldn't have that kind of scroll rate sessions, more interested in, let's say, certain pictures and not really reading the piece, more consuming different forms of content. Then of course Indian CPMs are also not that high.
Hmm.
So to doing all that extra mile of work and not being fighting with 100 websites, because there are so many cricket websites, and still not having that value from the audience, it just did not make business sense to us. From
Hmm.
a passion perspective, it was a tough call, but in my opinion, even if we were getting traffic on cricket, the kind of content we would have to do, me myself as a cricket fan, I wouldn't accept that
Hmm.
content. We do have a banter group, a cricket banter group of our company,
Hmm.
where we talk about cricket all the time, but we don't plan to start the division.
Right. So let's shift from you know the content towards the SEO. What are your as a news company, like what is your strategy with SEO? Do you just publish, or do you guys track and maintain the SEO of that?
SEO is a big pillar for us. So in April we did around 120 million pages in a month,
Wow.
and out of that, around half of them was from Google, from different assets of Google.
Mm-hmm.
So Google News, Google Search Results, Google Discover, all these different platforms on Google, right? So SEO has been a big ethos for us since 2014. We have done SEO. We have always tried to focus on SEO. We have learned a lot of SEO skills over time. And as a bootstrap company, and even as a media house, it never makes sense to spend money to get traffic, right? So SEO is the most scalable way that you can do it, right? And for news SEO, if you're a news company and you're not doing SEO, then you're missing the boat. What we do specifically, the big part is the linking strategy. So how you really structure your website decides if you're doing it right or wrong. So category, subcategory, tags, how they work together, how they link together. Then having a standard editorial SEO practice that, okay, this is how the subheadings, the titles, this is what links that you should put. These are the keywords that you're targeting. Every piece, there should be a reason which angle and which keyword that you're targeting. So these kind of things we try to keep in mind from a content perspective. From a technical perspective, we have we use AMP still, even though Google talks about maybe it's required or not required, we do keep an AMP version of our website. We have actually built a tech stack that matches our non-AMP and AMP version. So it's exactly the same, which a lot of media houses don't do. Like being able to create the same experience on non and AMP because it's complicated. But because of tools like yours and in general, understanding the ecosystem better over 8 years, we have figured out how to do it. Then Core Web Vitals, we did a big revamp last year to ensure that our Core Web Vitals standards are up to the mark. We score 98 or 99 score all the time with real user world data.
Core Web Vitals is such a huge metric for all the publishers, not just publishers, any website out there.
Any website. Yeah. Core Web Vitals have changed how the websites are structured.
And I remember initially it was so difficult, like, those LCP and FIP and those metrics and all those. It was extremely tough to understand, but now people have gotten used to it. And we have been doing huge work in Core Web Vital as well. So we've got some products in lineup as well on that. So what tools do you use to track SEO or track it? That could also be some errors or issues about Core Web Vitals or page speed, could be anything. What are some important tools that you use as a publisher?
Yeah, so there are different aspects that we are tracking all the time. So there is first the technical aspect that, okay, if everything is right from a tech SEO perspective, then there is a long-term content SEO aspect. If everything is right, structurally, are more keywords ranking over time? Is our domain authority improving? Is our page authority improving? And the third aspect is day-to-day news SEO aspect. I'll go one by one for all three. For tech SEO, I think definitely Search Console is the starting point. No matter how many tools exist in the market, Search Console is the source of truth. So we have a habit of checking things there all the time, ensuring that links, no errors are coming, checking those crawling metrics, etc. If everything is right. Then the second thing we do is in our publishing pipeline, we have an AMP validator check, which allows us to ensure that when we are pushing things out, the amount of issues that we have faced because of a wrong AMP code going live is very high. And it's difficult to see it, and you easily lose your ranking authority quickly if there's even a small mistake in AMP code, and Google cannot validate that code. As an AMP plugin, you have, Ahmed, you have the biggest AMP plugin in the ecosystem. We existed because of your plugin for a long while because I think AMP takes away the load of the traffic from your website. So there were moments I remember we would just keep running our website completely on AMP because infrastructure wise we couldn't handle the load at that point. So AMP definitely has a big role.
I'm glad that we could make some difference to some people's lives.
I'm sure there are quite a few people who have made a difference because like AMP, it's the best plugin in the ecosystem.
I'm glad to hear that. So let's come back to the tools, right? Technical SEO. You were using Search Console, and then you have internal AMP validation as well. What other tools do you use apart from that?
We use Moz. We use quite a bit. Then we have we use Logflare. So it's more of a log dump analysis. So it allows us to keep a real-time track of crawling of Google, which is really critical for us to understand how much weightage Google is giving to our news. Are they spending time really tracking our website? So let's say we even have pipelines checking how much crawl we got today, which piece got hit from the moment of publishing, how long did it take for the piece to get crawled by Google. Then we track when the first hit came from, let's say, Google AMP project. All these things we track to keep a measure of authority.
I guess for a news publisher, the moment the news comes out, it needs to, get hit by Google, right? And it needs to be there on the Google Discover. Yes. And people fail many times in that process. And though they are the first ones to, so I've heard this from some publisher. I don't remember his name, but he said that though even if you are the first one to publish in the world, I mean, you are the first one to break out that news, people could copy and then they could rank higher just because they have the technicality right.
Yes, technicality and topic authority. So it's not just about breaking the news, it's about Google knowing that you have breaking the news. So Google knowing means that first your domain should have that authority that Google is actually spending the energy to crawl you immediately. Because you could publish first, but if Google took you 30 minutes to crawl an index, not just crawl, index on their search, discover news, then you're 30 minutes late for Google.
How do you lower that time? Like for you
How
guys?
do you lower that time? I think the biggest thing that is in your hand is making it super fast. So your website should be super fast, because if your response time is high, Google can actually allot you more crawl budget. Then secondly, having an amazing sitemap. Your sitemap should load really, really quickly. If we had moments where our sitemap was slow and the crawl budget significantly fell down. Then the third thing is linking. So there are certain pages that Google considers more authority and certain less. So let's say if you have that piece on your homepage, then let's say that piece is on your social media handles. The moment it gets there, that also plays a role in indexing. And fourth, if you're getting traffic from other sources. So let's say if you have a good social media audience, good Instagram or a good Twitter audience, or let's say newsletter. So you can use your users as a push to get that visibility of traffic. And then Google has an ecosystem to figure out that, okay, this piece, these users, some users are reading on the internet, which really increases the index time.
So just to break that down and make it simpler, social media essentially helps you to build the authority. Would that be right way to say it?
It's a hypothesis we have, but
Okay.
we definitely believe it plays a role. So if you get a good push from social media, it has an impact on other platforms as well.
Right.
All
And that's the
platforms
thing,
have
that's the thing with
correlation.
Google, right?
Hmm.
It never wants to tell you everything 100%, right? It's always they'll always give some part of the knowledge, and then rest of it is based on your experience.
Well, yeah, true, but it's also the generation of machine learning algorithms, I feel. So it's not just engineers building it, it's the algorithm also evolving over time, right?
Right.
So let's say I can totally imagine an engineer build, you have a feature set that you have built to optimize that algorithm. You cannot tell which one is playing a major role.
Right.
So I think it's a more black box analysis. The good thing is it's fair for everybody because they don't tell it to anybody, which is great, because there is no unfair advantage that a big media house has compared to a small one.
Right.
You could start from a dorm room like us and still become big.
Right. And it's not a, if or else kind of a feature thing, where if you are doing that and I would just copy that, it might not work for me, because the algorithm is kind of, it's more of it's evolving on its own. No single person can copy and just become the same. So
Yep.
that is also a very interesting part of that. So let's just quickly finish up the tools that you're using for the
Yes, these were the tech SEO side. I think for long-term SEO, we mostly use Moz and Search Console keyword tracking. Then we have some sort of like Slack, Telegram integration, sometimes sending those messages, or even team just taking screenshots and putting it to the groups. And then for real-time SEO news, we use NewsDash. NewsDash is a tool. A good friend of mine, John, he has made that tool. John Shahata is his name. So it's the best tool out there for publisher news. It tracks top stories, it tracks ranking on news.google.com, all these data, that real-time data in a frequency of even 5 minutes, which most of the SEO tools don't provide, which is a great advantage. Generally, SEO industry has worked on historical data, which makes sense from an e-commerce audience or long-term search results audience. But for news and top stories, something more real-time is required, and NewsDash allows us to do that. That's what we use for SEO across.
Do you specifically track keywords? I know a lot of publishers and bloggers do, but what about specific keyword? Like there's a huge conversations going on a high volume keywords versus low volume. Do you guys ever look at that stuff?
There are two aspects to it for us. One is that we believe that this long-term content, it's definitely great for authority building and we do invest in it, but it never gets you volumes for as a news organization. As a news organization, you will always get volumes on today piece that has done today. Not
Right.
Even if you've done the best piece a month ago, that does not have that kind of a volume market overall.
Because of the relevance.
That's how the platform flow. Because of the relevance, but also of user behavior. I think long-term pieces, for them to show up consistently, it requires a user interest. So it's a more push behavior where somebody, let's say, has to go type and then the result shows up and then they consume that content. But typing, a lot less people do than, let's say, browsing a feed. As a generation, we are moving to browsing. So Instagram, you're browsing, Google Discover, you're browsing, Facebook, you're
Right.
browsing. People are not searching anymore. Your
Right.
search
So,
audience is significantly lower than a browsing audience, and browsing
wow.
always surfaces real-time stuff more because you want to consume, that platform wants you to consume today. They don't want to surface old content because
Hmm.
they don't think it would engage.
So even if we have some data on the queries,
Hmm.
like what
Hmm.
people are searching for, it might not be 100% true because we don't know what people are,
Browsing.
swiping and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the volume is.
Hmm.
90% of the volume is in browsing. Search is less than 10% of the volume.
Wow. That's interesting. So while you are, going through all of this stuff, there's also one more important thing that is going in the background, and that is monetization.
Hmm.
As a publisher, how challenging it is to monetize.
To do basic monetization, it's super easy, but to do monetization really well, it's really challenging, I would say, because there are just so many technicalities and black box behavior in the whole AdOps ecosystem that it's difficult to know what to do, what not to do.
Hmm.
And as a publisher, most of the publishers are focused on their content, right? To really take out time and understand ad operations, it's a Herculean task. Initially, everybody starts with AdSense, and we did as well.
Hmm.
Right now we have our own GAM 360. We do AdX, we do open bidding, we do header bidding. Header bidding is done through a partner of ours. We are partnered with AdPushUp. They are the
Hmm.
best AdOps company in India, in my opinion. And we have a good relation with them. They help us monetize on header bidding. But overall, to understand this, even somebody who's like, I come from an engineering background, we have handled the whole engineering team, but it took me a while to understand AdOps. So I would say it's really challenging, but it's worth understanding because the impact on the top line that you can create because of the right AdOps, it's in a magnitude of 2 to 3x, which is really critical in a world of CPMs, which are low margin businesses overall.
Hmm. So I've been working with so many publishers throughout the decade, and I know so many publishers who are, getting the traffic in millions, but they don't know how to monetize. The only strategy that they have is just put the AdSense and,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. So what would you suggest them?
Think well. You can take the easy way route or you can get a tough route. The easy way route is, I would say, upgrade your technology by getting a technology AdOps partner.
Hmm.
So maybe I would recommend AdPushUp, but maybe somebody else as well. There are a lot of players in the market. AdThrive, Ezoic, there are quite a few. So get an AdOps partner. So they take care of your technology in a way where instead of AdSense, you are running an exchange competition going on the website. It will definitely increase your CPMs by at least 50%, and you wouldn't have to spend an energy on it. The
Interesting.
thing is, the whole ecosystem works in splits. Like, it takes away a lot of control from your hand if you completely give it to somebody else. So I
Hmm.
would say it's important to know some aspects yourself as well, because ultimately you know your business the best. So
Hmm.
how does AdOps work with content really helps you optimize long term as well.
Nice.
So either get a technology partner, or let's say become big enough that you can get your own Google Ad Manager from Google directly.
Hmm. I believe they are calling it double click. Is that the one, or they have changed the name again?
Yeah, they've changed the name again. It used to be DoubleClick for publishers, DFP before.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have three versions. So one is just AdSense that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Then a lot of times people log in on Google Ad Manager with a free account, but that account doesn't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can get Google Ad Manager small and medium businesses, which generally, let's say if you're doing 10 million page views a month or something, then you can get something like a Google Ad Manager small and medium business, which is a free software, but
Mm-hmm.
it allows you to get access to AdX. So
Okay.
AdX is a much better demand than AdSense.
Mm.
In AdSense, Google also keeps a higher cut. In AdX, they keep much lesser cut. It's a more premium demand, better revenue share. So move to AdX. That itself will increase your inventory quality significantly. And from there, you can maybe then get a header bidding partner on board as well.
Interesting. So, interestingly, you mentioned Ad Pushup. We have also done an partnership with Ad Pushup, and uh, they have been a very good company so far. Uh, I plan to have them some time on the interview as well, and it would be interesting to talk about that challenge, those kind of stuff, to know more about the ad and the advertising. Let's talk about advertising versus other monetization methods. Like, are there any other monetization? Because it seems like publishers are relying too much on the ads. Are there any other revenue models which a publisher needs to focus on?
Well, we are completely programmatic ads monetized, so definitely I have a bias for that. Subscriptions are definitely becoming a thing in the market. That with Substack coming in and New York Times doing the public subscription business really well. In India, there's the Ken. So subscription businesses are becoming a thing. Athletic did subscription. But my opinion in subscription is I've seen that a lot of companies start with, let's say, a $10 a month subscription, but most of the time they're running a campaign to sell it for $1. So
Absolutely, that's
just
the
looking
whole.
at that makes me think I don't know how good their conversion numbers are.
Hmm.
And as somebody who's a big believer of internet, I do believe in the power of free internet.
Hmm.
So, and ads allow us to run this internet free, right? It allows us to give amazing quality content
Same
for
here, man.
free
Same
by
here.
using
I
programmatic
also
ads.
believe in the same thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
just hate anybody who is, giving away some stuff and then keeping it behind the paywall.
Yes.
Essentially, the paywall is what Google is calling it technically when we call it
Yeah.
subscription. So,
Yeah.
paywall is one thing, and then there
Paywall
are
is one thing.
other. What are some other things which you, as a publisher, see like this could be some monetization methods?
So e-commerce is also a straightforward one.
Mhm.
Definitely, e-commerce makes a lot of sense because let's say we have a lot of Michael Jordan fans, let's say, read our website.
So
And
merch.
Last Dance comes out. Then there are a lot of memes being going around
Mhm.
Last Dance. So it makes total sense to, let's say, put those quotes on a t-shirt and give it to the fans. Fans would love
Right.
it. Fans would buy it. And I've seen a lot of successes with e-commerce in the media businesses. Like
Mhm.
Barstool Sports in America is a big example of who has done e-commerce well with media. That's one business model. Then I think newsletters are evolving in a way where newsletters don't do programmatic ads, but instead there are more direct relation paid partnerships that are
Mhm.
going on, which yield good numbers for publishers. So I would definitely recommend branded partnerships as a
Mhm.
good route to make good revenue on
What is your percentage of ad versus the other revenue models?
um, ads. Primarily is our majority revenue model because we have tried to be more lean as a team. We don't set up a sales team or like as an engineer run organization, we want to invest more on our moat, that is content, and
Mhm.
everything else we want to automate for scale.
Right. Right.
And running a salesperson service angle, we are not looking for that. Like, because once you get like that sales team in, you are kind of servicing the client to get
Mhm.
that paid audience in, which we are not looking for. Instead, we might build something more of a product based approach where, let's say, we are building communities, we are building more solutions
Mhm.
that our fans want as a sports engagement platform.
Right. So if you are heavily relying on ads, you
Hmm.
also you also need to focus on the articles, right? You
Hmm.
also need to focus on the content, and content has been the traditional method of publishing, but then there are new methods which are coming up.
Hmm.
YouTube, we have seen the takeover of YouTube from the TV in the last 5 years. And then I've seen the interesting stats that I've seen these days is there are people who are spending less time on YouTube now. So YouTube has become less relevant and people are spending more time on the shorts, on the reels.
Hmm.
So it used to be like people used to spend, 3 hours on TV 10
Hmm.
years ago, and then 2 years ago they were spending 3 years ago they were spending 3 hours of that time on YouTube, and 5 minutes or 10 minutes on an average on TV.
Hmm.
And now it has gone down to, they're just spending 1 hour on the YouTube, and
Hmm.
rest of that 2 hours is on reels.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
when I say reels, it also includes the YouTube shorts.
yeah, of
But
course.
that specific audience is not going to watch the whole length video
Hmm.
because their time has split between the actual full length video versus the shorts.
Hmm. So I definitely think there is a trend that overall, because of in media being easy to create now, content being easy to create, there is a big boom that is happening across the internet in the past 5 years. There's all kind of content form innovation that is happening. There is written content, there's podcasts, there's videos, there's shorts, there's reels, there's stories, there's of course memes that we talked about. So all kinds of content forms are coming in, and in my opinion, people consume all of them, not just one. They definitely have a bias of one, each
Absolutely.
person depending on their individuality, but they cover all of them. And one of our strengths have actually been that we combine a lot of these forms together in a single reading experience. So if you read a piece on essentiallysports.com, you will see a tweet embedded, you will see an Instagram embed, you will see a YouTube video, you will see
Absolutely.
our own highlight videos from, let's say, the official NBA channel, NFL channel, etc. So that's one part of it, in combining the written form content with these media forms. But at the same time, like these forms, I feel these innovations are always going to happen. So as a media company, it always makes sense to try to create one media content form, innovate on one content form every year. So let's say last year we did web stories,
Hmm.
and we saw amazing numbers on web stories. This year we plan to try out reels for
Hmm.
our audience,
Hmm.
and we have a lot of fan channels on Instagram and Facebook. So they're like trying out creating those reels
Right.
is something we intend to do. A big problem, in my opinion, media organization face is these things are more video focused,
Hmm.
and licensing around videos is a nightmare. So
Hmm.
how that is going to evolve in the ecosystem, especially in sports ecosystem where IP infringement is a bigger deal than, let's say, entertainment, where Netflix, etc., are more open to their trailers being used by creatives,
Hmm.
is something I'm concerned about.
Right.
Like I see NBA videos go down all the time on YouTube. YouTube has a much stronger infringement policies, but they are not applying the same policies on shorts right now. Instagram Reels has literally no policy right now because they just want to grow.
Hmm.
So how all of these things are going to play out together, it remains to be seen.
Hmm. Interesting. So, what is the future of sports publishing from your point of view?
Sports publishing. I think sports are completely moving online. They are being democratized more and more. So the world of that, okay, just it's going to just be streamed on an ESPN or a Sony Live in India, or licensing will happen, but you see it's already changing. Like 4 years ago, there used to be just only one right that used to go. And the let's say Sony got the TV right, they would also show it on their app.
Hmm.
But last year, I this year IPL is doing for the first time TV rights and online rights differently. OTT rights and TV rights. They are doing different pricing for them. So it just shows how OTT platforms and online media houses are becoming more and more prominent. And the first thing that a media organization, as a sports organization, is going to think about, because that is where the power lies. You are seeing Barstool Sports recently did. Um, so there was an NFL match where there was this commentary, but they also did their own commentary on that live stream, partnered with Dazen, which is a live stream partner for NFL. So
Hmm.
these kind of innovations, I expect sports media to do a lot more. So live streams will become part of the content where people will come on your own website to see that match, talk about it. Online communities will become more and more prominent. They will start to replicate the pub's behavior, where people used to go to watch a match in a pub. You're
Hmm.
going to watch it online in a community on a live stream that is happening on this media house. Then reading all those news. Celebrities, sports celebrities are moving online. People are talking on Facebook, Instagram. Just these celebrities are building their own audiences. It's definitely going to become a big thing, in my opinion. And it's only going bigger. And it's going to, another thing I would like to add, just
Hmm.
to wrap this part up, is it's going to become more and more global.
Okay.
Us being able to run American sports from India shows
Hmm.
how global sports are becoming, because now press conferences, matches, everything is available online. The fan bases are becoming more global overall. Like let's say in mixed martial arts, most of the fighters don't even speak English,
Hmm.
but they have a biggest following in America. So many Russian fighters are in that ecosystem. We'll see sports become more global because of the internet, and media organizations are going to make them more
Hmm.
democratized and global. Yeah.
What is the current tech stack and how you guys are evolving, and what are the challenges you are facing with that?
Yeah. So as like a lot of publishers, we started with WordPress
Mm-hmm.
in back in 2014. We still have changes in our WordPress config file that still lies, which I did in 2014. In 2022, that's the same WP config file being transferred every time from different instances. We started with DigitalOcean and all these HostGator, where everybody used to start in 2014.
Right.
Right now, we have a headless CMS setup,
Mhm.
which we did because of the Core Web Vital update that was coming in. It was a long time coming for us. So now our headless CMS setup is that we have our backend on AWS completely. So we have a WordPress instance, an EC2 WordPress instance, a Redis cluster, which we use Elastic Cache.
Hmm.
Then we have an RDS setup, which is a master slave setup for our whole backend.
Interesting.
Then we have our data APIs sending the data to frontend. Now for those data APIs, you would know that WordPress APIs are super slow. They're just super
Absolutely.
slow because especially at our scale, we have more than 100,000 articles in our database, a lot of history, a lot of edits, all those things. So what we also do is we have an S3 CloudFront layer. So we have an event pipeline, which on publish, update, delete, all these events, we publish the API response in an S3. We
Hmm.
use S3 as a cache, and then we expose that API as an adapter on top of WordPress API. So that
Hmm.
allows us to be really, really fast, because now we are not hitting the WordPress database, but we are actually fetching the API response from an S3.
Right.
Now, this is our backend setup. On front end, we use Vercel. They are, in my opinion, best web performance infrastructure right now,
Hmm.
platform as an infrastructure. So because we use Vercel, it means Next.js is our technology stack. Next.js
Hmm.
is I would highly recommend that framework. It's a completely serverless Lambda setup. So it allows us to scale really, really easily. We have page caching on top of it, on top of our Vercel instance. So that really allows us to save on our serverless functions spending and just spend bandwidth if we scale. So the front end is Vercel, which is Next.js with page caching enabled. We have the image component. So we have these WebP images coming in, which I'm mentioning these things because these are the things which we faced as a performance bottleneck when we started.
Right.
So ensuring that a right image component with WebP images is there, because it
Hmm.
ensures that we are the fastest in Core Web Vitals. So we do that. We also use Bunny CDN. It
Hmm.
is a good cheap CDN at scale. It allows us to scale. And then we have for stories, we have a different pipeline. We use a tool called Make Stories. They are really good. From there, we wanted a more interactive graphic tool, so Make Stories do that well.
Hmm.
From there, the publishing goes directly to our S3, which we expose as a redirect URL on our front end
Hmm.
right now. So it's a bit of complicated setup.
So the
I
stack sounds very interesting, and it sounds like a lot of work as well. So how
Mhm.
much time it took you guys to actually, shift to headless?
um I think we did an Unreal sprint. That sprint
Hmm.
was amazing what we did. So it was a long time coming. I had personally been reading about it, understanding it, even having discussions with you for a
Hmm.
couple of years in 2018, 2019, 2020. Then in 2021, there was an update coming in May, which was really critical for us. The Google had announced that Core Web Vital are becoming
The
critical.
primary thing.
Yes. And we wanted to have that edge that we were ready for it. So on January 30th, I started this project with a good friend of mine, Mayank Barola. He's an amazing engineer.
Hmm.
And we decided to do a 3 month sprint
Okay.
to do it end to end. And he was able to build the whole system in 3 months end to end, from ideation to making it live. So by May 10th, we had a fully functioning website live with
Interesting.
completely new setup.
Interesting. Interesting. I think 3 months sounds like a lot, but it's not. For you to move from, as a publishing company, I would not say it's a news website, it's a publishing company which is running and publishing hundreds of articles every single day, and every movement is going on, and then you are shifting your CMS suddenly in just 3 months. You've done an amazing job in such a short span of time, I think. And then,
Especially at scale, it's difficult to do because
right.
you have like real users and their experience is significantly going to change. Your ad placements are going to change. So keeping these things into account it's difficult to do it.
I've talked to a lot of publishers, and they want to move to headless,
Hmm.
but there are so many things that are stopping them.
Hmm.
Plugin compatibilities, There are so many things that are running in the background. The effort that is required. I mean, they don't want to spend that time. We have that mentality, jo chal raha hai, usko chalne do. But how do you get over that?
I think keeping a long-term mindset really helps you get over that. Because in my opinion, headless CMS is inevitable.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense to have your front end and back end so linked together anymore in this current world of web engineering.
Especially when
Web
you are
engineering has
scaling.
evolved so much. Yeah, especially when you scale. Like you cannot really have iterative product engineering implementation. If you plan to release features in your product even every month, I would recommend that everybody should be releasing features every day, at least trying some experiments. But even if you plan to do it every month, you cannot do it in that setup that default WordPress provides. It doesn't allow you to use the best tools that industry already has, like creating a CI/CD pipeline, or let's say running an A/B experiment easily, or using those design libraries which can directly integrate in your front end web stack. You just cannot do it. So headless CMS, it's an inevitable. In 5 years, all the publishers will be doing it because the market will force them to. WordPress themselves is coming out with a version of it.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable. If you do it earlier, it gives you an edge because you can actually build engineering. But one thing I would recommend is there's a lot of hate for WordPress sometimes in the ecosystem, but I love WordPress. I don't think moving to headless CMS means that you have to leave WordPress. Our backend completely runs still in WordPress. I think it's the best tool out there for writers and editors to use. The integration that it has, it allows us to integrate, let's say, your tool like AMP easily, which wouldn't work in a headless CMS setup directly because the front end would change. But let's say add RSS feeds you get out of the box, sitemaps you get out of the box, something like Facebook instant articles you get out of the box that you can just integrate on your backend pipeline. Then a lot of it really allows you to be lean because WordPress is an evolved ecosystem, and all the problems that publishers face, mostly people have faced it. Let's say if you want to integrate some sort of a grammar API, probably there's a WordPress plugin for it.
Right.
If you Yoast SEO, it's the best SEO plugin out there, right? That is part of WordPress already. These things, it doesn't make sense to build it yourself because you need to even maintain them and make incremental innovation.
Right. So I think WordPress is a backend and headless as a front end. That's the best way to go.
Yes, that's the best way to go. Right. I think Next.js is the front end and keeping WordPress as the backend is an ideal setup. I cannot imagine anything better than this.
Right. So in one of our other products that is related to the schema and structured data. So even we have built a new feature in that which allows people who are using headless, so then they don't have to, even if the output is not coming in the WordPress, we have a special, integration where you can just directly call that schema from the back of WordPress and directly show it to your headless CMS. So it's not just us, it's a lot of other plugins who are creating those. There's a new phenomenon called headless compatibility. There's no such thing as that, but essentially what you are doing is you're just exporting that data in the JSON. But there's this new concept which is coming on. You have to make it, headless compatible. So I think more and more people will do that. More and more plugin authors will do that in the future, and headless is going to evolve for sure.
I do think though that WordPress as a community, the platform itself needs to evolve a lot more for it to be better headless compliant. Like the current API, it doesn't have the resilience to handle a good headless CMS setup. There are I'm not sure if how comfortable you are in me going to details here, but there are a couple of things that just blew my mind that I found out when you were doing the headless CMS change. So for example, if you have uploaded an image on a media library and then you use that image to publish a post later. Okay. But the parent of that image would be private because media library doesn't have a parent. Or let's say you put that image on a draft which was never published, but then you reuse that image on another piece from the library. If the parent of the image is not public, then the API doesn't allow you to access details from a media endpoint.
They have, I think they have something called attach. So image needs to be attached to something.
Yes.
Otherwise,
to a public entity, it needs to be agent.
Right. Otherwise, even if it is there, it does not exist for the API.
Exactly, which doesn't show like an evolved system. It seems such a old school issue, because I can imagine a lot of media publishers do put images in the library, right? Let's say, especially when you have licensed images, you buy hundreds of licensed images, you put it in a library so that your editors can use. But the API wouldn't have that.
Interesting. So, do
Okay.
you guys have a social media strategy?
We have a good social media outreach. From a strategy perspective, I definitely think we need to evolve a lot more. We did start as a SEO and social media organization even from the beginning. So big thing we do is we have a lot of fan pages. So we have so many social media handles which are not really essentially sports, but just a good fan page. And the hypothesis is that people care more about their players and teams and not about the brand itself. So if you ask them to follow a handle which
They
is
won't.
about Lewis Hamilton,
Right.
they would care about it more than, let's say, if you
Absolutely.
ask them to follow Essentially Sports as well.
Essentially sports, right? Correct.
Yes. So that's why we have a lot of fan pages on Facebook and Instagram, countless outreach out of that. But our main brand handles have a long way to go from a strategy perspective. So we plan to evolve there a lot more.
I think it would make sense more to focus on, the people, and the sports fans have this cult mentality, and it's better to evolve on that.
Exactly. And that has been our ethos always. As the fans perspective organization, we wanted to target the cult, create a cult around it. Then we'll just surface. I think we'll create enough value out of it that our business also works.
Interesting. So what was some of the biggest fan moments as a sports enthusiast? Since you've been in touch with so many sports personalities and sports teams and all, you must have got a chance to meet a lot of sports people. And do you have such moments like you got to meet some X, Y, and Z? I've noticed there are so many big sports players who have tweeted your articles. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think those moments were really good when somebody tweets. A special one-to-one moment was last year. On my birthday, I got a video from Nick Kyrgios wishing happy birthday. So that
Wow.
was quite special. A lot of moments our team has, so I know people who our journalists have taken interviews of people they would never expect they would even say hi to. So
Right.
let's say in press conferences, our tennis team right now goes and talks to Novak Djokovic, asks a question. It's still a dream for us to talk to Roger Federer. That remains, but everybody else in tennis community we have. Then I think personally for me, another big win was I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. He's a big internet celebrity in
Yeah.
America, and he has this esports team as well recently. So he
Right.
started following Essentially Sports a bit, and sometime back he shared some of our pieces, which we
Nice.
cover around that, and it was a big fan moment for me.
So
Wow,
Gary
Gary
Vee
Vee.
never stops.
Yeah, he never stops. He's always hustling.
Yeah. So and he's too invested now on esports, and I think esports is becoming such a bigger category now. Are you guys focusing on esports?
It's a division we started back in 2020. We have seen some good wins there, but the esports ecosystem is quite evolved. And the thing is that because esports is an internet first thing, a lot of the things, a lot of the knowledge that we brought into the sports ecosystem, like in NBA, NFL, golf, NASCAR, those behaviors, esports media houses have always been doing. So how do we create an edge in esports is something we are figuring out right now.
Is esports that big that people are saying?
It is. It is. It is. The market size of esports is huge.
I think
Like the numbers, if you are looking to get a number like that in NBA, just let's say if you're just an NBA website, esports is at least 10x of that.
I've heard somebody from one of my friend that he was saying that esports is very big in Korea and Japan and those Asian countries. I'm not sure if you like, if you would look at your traffic, I think you would get a more better perspective on that.
In our research from SEO tools, we have noticed that Asia is a strong market. So, for example, Philippines is really, really big in esports. China, of course, is a lot of Twitch channels and everything is Chinese, Korean, Japanese is a big part of it. But for a media organization, let's say if you're writing written content, generally China, Japan, Korea is not able to become your audience because they are not consuming content in English. They are consuming content in their language. So how do we as a market handle those multi-language is a thing we need to think about eventually.
Have you ever explored that territory of becoming multilingual sports brand?
We have not experimented, but we have definitely done thought experiments around it. We will eventually do at least Spanish and French.
Or do you think the non-speaking, like the Japanese or Chinese people, would they care about and care for an English article?
No, they would not. They would not care about an English article. Most of the content they consume is completely in their own language, and those cultures are quite evolved. So most of the countries that pick up English, they in Japan, China, Korea, there is a strong cultural bias around it. They do a lot of media production in their own language. It's what you see happening in India as well, right? Even though India had a big upstart in English, but now you will see so many companies becoming multilingual because they are realizing that a big portion of our population still wants to read content in their own language. You see WhatsApp forwards coming in Hindi now.
Right.
There's a lot more audio content happening. There are websites like apps like Khabri and all these, which are doing news in the language. And that ecosystem is already quite evolved in Japan, Korea, and China.
Right.
So younger generation maybe reads a bit of English, but it wouldn't make sense for them because the content that they have in their own language is just so good.
So I think we've got so much, covered for people over here, and I am so thankful for you that you had spent so much time, and it was such a fun conversation that I've had.
Thank you, Ahmed. It's always nice to talk to you, and I would love to do it the other side round as well. Hear your story.
Absolutely.
I would just say one thing to close it off. Overall, I think media as an industry is again booming. I think there was a slump that happened in between where everybody thought media is going away, but now content is king again. And I would only give one tip, that keeping content at the core of your organization as a publisher, doing high quality content will create a long-term edge. But at the same time, building a team which has the expertise to understand the technology, ad ops, marketing, SEO is what will help publishers build something long-term, and leveraging the ecosystem to make that happen. It's
sounds
good. I have.
I wanted you to, give some tips for the new publishers, but I think in the whole interview, we've got so much content that I'm sure people can relate to and get a lot of learnings from. So thank you so much for doing this round of interview, and I really appreciate your time, and we should get together once again very soon. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Have a good day, man.
Have a good day. You too. Bye-bye.